in to polish it out, and that's really dumb. Slug.
Excited.
Laundry day today?
It's not
Yeah.
Sid anymore, it's Slug.
I'm so excited.
Slug me?
There's dog hair in my phone case and I'm trying to get it out.
Don't use that, Sydney. What? That's gonna make it in the video. It's gonna be like,
Do the Carlton.
Do the Carlton.
You're not flailing your arms enough. It's like all the way down, all the way up.
is that better?
Then you gotta bring them all the way up. And then go all the way up. There you go.
Be what you wanna be. Do what you wanna do. And if it sets you free, believe in only you. Yesterday is gone. Forget about tomorrow and the ceilings you see right through. Find the moment and make it. Write your headline and raise it to the sky. No one else can create it. Take your banner and raise it to the sky.
Hey guys, so we are starting a new series on the next step of our refit. We're going to call our Power Series, and it's going to go through quite a few different episodes, I think, covering everything from solar, batteries, consumption, inverters, wiring, all that fun stuff. And so I wanted to give you kind of an overlay so you know what's coming up and what we're going to talk about specifically in this and probably the next episode, which is going to be solar. So the quick overview of everything is that how we planned the power consumption on our boat was we decided we were going to make the boat home first so that we didn't feel like we were going to go camping. And that gave us a big list of all of the things that we wanted on our boat, from induction cooktops and electric ovens and washers and dryers and ice makers and all of that fun stuff that we all like to have in our houses. And we put it all in a spreadsheet and calculated out a total number of projected watt consumption for our boat on a daily basis. And I'm going to be talking about this for the most part in watt hours versus amp hours, because all of us are going to be using power a little bit differently. There's boats that run on 12 volt, there's boats that run on 24 volt. We happen to be a 48 volt system. So if we're comparing amp hour to amp hour, it won't necessarily make sense to everybody, and we're trying to keep you from having to break out a calculator to enjoy the video. So watt hours, we figured that on a low consumption day, about 8,000 or 9,000 watts, and on a high consumption day, we could be 15,000 to 17,000 watts. Calculating all of that out, that led us to the next step, which was, well, how much battery storage do you need? How much battery consumption do you need if you don't want to be living on a generator? And that was really important to us. We didn't want to hear a vibrating generator every day. So we took that number of, say, 15,000 watts, and then we multiplied it times 3. And that gave us a couple days of just cushion. So let's say that it was cloudy for, like today, for a day or two, and we didn't want to constantly have to turn that generator on every single day as a crutch just to be able to run the appliances that we wanted from home. So one way to be able to make that happen is to have a big battery bank. So we put in a very large, very, very large battery bank, which we will absolutely get to in a future video. We did Tesla modules, and to give you a sneak peek on that, we've got about 53 kilowatts of power, or just north of 1,000 amps of usable power at 48 volts. That's a lot of juice, everybody. Those batteries run through our inverters. Now, we decided to do everything on the boat through a brand as far as inversion and charge controllers called Victron. And they actually are from Europe, and they started out in the marine industry, and everything is geared around really marine durability to begin with. They've got a great reputation, and the best part is all of their equipment talks to each other either via network or Bluetooth, and we'll get to that in another video. But that is what turns our big Tesla battery bank into usable watt hours of electricity, so that we can plug stuff into the wall like hair dryers and curling irons and induction cooktops and all that fun stuff. And then what we decided to do is then say, okay, how much solar do we need? Well, we don't really know. There's these rough formulas with sunny days, cloudy days, low altitude or low latitudes, high latitudes. What are you going to produce? Well, that's going to be a variable, and we really didn't know. But we did know that we were starting in South Florida, and we were starting in Florida in that springtime. So it's not a ton of solar, but it's a fair amount. We're coming out of winter. And so we thought, let's just start with a base amount of solar. So we'll start with 2,000. So to get the power back into our batteries, what we want to do, of course, is use free energy, which is solar. And we weren't sure exactly how much solar we were going to need, but everybody said you could never have too much solar. So never have too much power, never have too much solar. There's a bunch of never too much of lists in the boating world, obviously. But where do we put it all? And it's a fairly good sized boat, but we don't want this thing to look like the Millennium Falcon either, or some sort of tumbling gypsy wagon that runs down the road. So how do we get the most solar on the boat as tastefully as possible? And we started off with our rear cockpit area. So above our sugar scoops and the davits, off the back of the coach roof, we decided to put a big solar array in the back of the boat, and that is going to have about 2,000 watts, not about, it will have 2,000 watts of solar on it, and provide us about 17 feet by about 6.5 feet of shade. And we're going to start there and see where our consumption goes from. From there, we know we're going to probably have to add more, but we want to get everything in and running in the boat, operate it, and see what kind of deficiencies that we're at. Because we have all these charts that'll be able to, or logging with our system, that'll tell us how much we're using and how much we're putting back in. So that is going to be the start. Then if we need a generator, which we originally planned on doing so, but now we're questioning maybe we will or maybe we won't, that's to be determined. So follow along with us, and we are going to put solar on the boat, put batteries in it, get the inverters hooked up, use the boat with air conditioning, all of those processes, and then determine, do we need that generator, do we not, and can we really be a 100% solar boat? So that's the overview. We're going to get started now, and I'm going to give you a rundown of what we're going to do, how we're going to step through that process, so you know what's coming up in this and the next video. All right, now that we have all that stuff out of the way, let's get down to talking about how we're going to build this solar array. Obviously, I'm going to put this big giant cover off the back of the boat, and there's nothing to hold it up right now. So I decided that I wanted to use stainless steel, and I settled on using a product that is actually made for handrails. So it's a 316 product, and the best part about the product is there is all the fittings that you can buy for it actually sleeve in out of one another. So they'll make a 90 or an elbow or a T, and that actually will slide inside the tube and create a flush seam that we'll be able to do a little weld in the groove, and then polish that and sand and buff that out so it'll look like it was one continuous made piece. And that is going to mount on our boat from the back of the coach roof. There's going to be 3 mount points there, and then we're going to drop some long legs that run down to the sugar scoops that'll support the back side of it. And I'm really excited about that process. We'll see if we need some extra supports and how that's going to go. But this process should only take a few days, planning about a week start to finish, and let's just get right into it. And I got online and I found solar panels on Facebook Marketplace, brand new LG panels. They're big, they're 41 by 82 inches, 80 inches, but 5 of them, and we got them $600 solar panels, I think they were, for $195 a piece. So that is going to give us a ton of shade and hopefully a good chunk of the power we need to put back in this battery bank. All right, what you're seeing me do here is just taking a quick inventory of all of the parts that we ordered for the solar array. And then I'm going to do a layout to make sure that I planned correctly and I've got all the correct fittings before I start. The next step is measuring and cutting all the pieces down. I made a pretty extensive layout, and I'm using a cold cut saw here to cut through all of the stainless steel tube, and that will allow me to have this big pile of finished pieces that are all labeled so we can start building. All right, now we're moving on to assembly. I tried to do this under the boat on the workbench with the 2x4s you're going to see here in just a second, and realized that was not going to work. So out onto the asphalt I went, and I start mocking up this array, and then I'm going to get these 2x4s and put it under the cross members. Getting the 2x4s underneath of there are going to allow me to be able to not only assemble it above the ground, but then it's also going to allow me to get underneath of it and adjust the array for level. Obviously the asphalt isn't flat, and I want to build a arch upside down into the array so that when we put the solar panels on it, it flattens the array out. So what you're seeing me do here is just leveling everything up and making sure that the entire array, first of all, is flat, and then going back around and elevating the sides so that we get that arch built in. And now I'm going to be moving on to the welding. What you're seeing me do here is just move around to each individual joint and put a couple little tack welds on it to keep it from moving and make sure that it stays straight. It was a long day. You can see that it's getting dark, and I am exhausted at this point. So once I'm done doing all the tack ups, then comes the happy dance. It's now measured, assembled, tacked in place, and all I need to do is finish putting it together.
So you're drinking your morning coffee this morning and taking a minute to take a deep breath. How come?
Well, our favorite security guard here at the boat yard,
He actually is our favorite
He
security
is.
guard. He's fantastic.
absolutely awesome. And I was welding up the solar array last night down between our boat and the next boat, and
You did a happy dance even,
I
right?
even did a happy dance. And it gets all done, and Ron drives by on his hourly, semi-hourly check, and he's gonna check that whatever they check outside. And he's like, "Hey, it's okay to drive over that, right?" Ha ha ha! It's kind of funny. Fast forward like 2 hours, and we hear this crash. Well, Ron forgot, and we had everything welded, mocked up. Everything was sitting perfect for today when I had more light, so I could finish welding everything. And he ran over it with a lifted golf cart, knocked it off the stands. So we just put it back up on the blocks and checked it this morning, and it was at a square over an inch. So Kim and I tugged and poked and prodded and all of that fun stuff until we got it straight, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to, when it welds up, it'll stay square and you won't notice the difference. But he definitely got it, but it's going to set us back a couple hours today. So it is what it is. So it's the next morning, and Kim and I head outside. She's holding the boards to block the wind for me so that I can move around and finish welding all the seams. Right, so we can see up here, and we can see over there. We can see
It's a terrible outfit choice.
terrible outfit choice.
Crocs
Go
being
solar
sport
on a
mode.
cloudy day. What?
Crocs being sport mode.
Sport mode. All right, now it's time to put up the solar array. This is our second go around on this rodeo. We did a test fit already before we finished doing all the final welding and grinding of the seams. So Sid's not much on height, but she is a trooper hanging out up there and making sure that we can safely get this up on top of the boat without anybody getting hurt. this plank that I put up in between or over top of the davits actually had been quite helpful. Everything from doing measurement and layout to test fitting, and then of course holding up the array while we install the legs that drop down to the sugar scoops. I don't think there's any way we could have done this project on the water, so it's really good that we've had a little bit of extra time in the yard to be able to make this happen. After we got the array up and pretty much level, what you're seeing me do here is just put the legs in. They are pressure fit with those slip fittings, which worked great, but we've measured this 100 times. Now we're doing is just final assembly. And here in just a second, I'll go down and drill them in and hold them to the bottom, make sure they're square and level, and that's it. And now it's time for panels. After meticulous measuring, cutting, assembling, and days of grinding and polishing, we're now ready to put the panels up on the boat. And of course, wouldn't you know it, the time that we're ready to do that, it's blowing 15 to 19 knots outside. But we were able to get them all up on top of the boat safely. It does take 2 people, as you can see, because they are pretty big. And we went around and clamped them down in the process just to make sure they wouldn't pop up on us before we were able to screw them in. You can see the wind in the background. It's blowing pretty good. It peaked out just about 18 or 19 knots when we were done. All right, with the panels up in place and bolted in, we were ready to wire them up. But first, we had to put some waterproof connections in the top of the boat. These nifty little deals create a waterproof entry point, and then we're gluing them down with this 4200, as you see. We want to make sure that we use 4200 because it's a semi-permanent bond, and we'll be able to get them out necessary if we need to do any maintenance or painting or anything like that. All right, now we just have to wait for it to dry. Okay, so we have a solar array, and each of these solar panels has a control box thingamajigger. I don't know what the technical term is. And those wires that come out of that box run into one of these strain reliefs, these waterproof strain reliefs we put in. That comes down into this channel. So you can see there's this access panel here. That is underneath the Traveler where the bolts run through, but it also leaves us a chase. So all these wires are coming out from all of these waterproof access points. They're coming down through here, down through an opening where this access panel goes, and from there, this is where we connect everything on the inside. Then from here, it runs down through, around the table mount, over here, through this access point, and then goes down here, underneath the walkway, around through, around where the cables go, down inside here, which then goes down behind the cabinets inside the salon, straight down to the mechanical space below. There, it comes all the way down in, and here are our charge controllers. Excuse the wire mess, we're still wiring up our main panel. From there, it goes down underneath the floor. This is our water collection bucket for our ice maker. It goes underneath the bed, and goes down in here, which connects to our main power hookup. All right, everybody, that wraps up the bulk of the solar project that we have done so far. Little tidbit, since we wrapped up putting the solar array on the back, we ended up adding, you can see behind us here, another solar panel. That center panel, which we'll cover this next week, but the center panel was not producing enough voltage by itself, so we needed to add a sister panel and run that one in series as well. So we'll cover that next week when we move on to what the solar panels are hooked up to, which are the batteries. So, in the meantime,
We'd like to give a shout out to our second patron, Peggy. Thank you so much for your contribution and support. We really, really appreciate it. Peggy lives here in Florida, and we're really happy and excited that we're starting to reach further and further around not only the US, but we see on our website that we're also getting people looking at the website from other parts of the world as well, which we really like seeing. If you'd like to follow us along, you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Give us a like and follow there. Also, one of the best ways that you can help and support us is to like this video. You can binge watch. I know there's not very many. We're working on that. But binge watch our videos as well, liking each one along the way. And then make sure you hit that subscribe button. Those are the best and fastest ways that you can give us support and keep these videos coming. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.
No one else can create